Hello and welcome to the show. I am Mary Grace. This is the Mary Grace Show, and we are here with an incredible guest today. And I always forget, I have to tell you this little tagline before we start. I'm Mary Grace, the voice of sanity to help you navigate politics, culture, wellness, faith, and world events. Okay, here we go. Next intro. I have an incredible guest with me here today. I'm very excited. We were chatting offline, which is the reason that I'm a little bit late getting started. It's always fun doing that. Jill Donovan is an entrepreneur who started a company out of sort of a relentless quest to learn new things and to be the consummate regifter. And I'm not really explaining it that well, but when you hear her story and you um, get inspired by her, you're going to love her and you're going to want to make 2025 your best year ever. And that's why we're here today. Welcome to the show, Jill Donovan. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Mary Grace. I love your tagline. Do you say that when you get like on elevators? Hi,
Um,
I'm Mary Grace.
yeah, the
Here,
voice of humanity to help you navigate politics, culture, wellness, faith, and world events.
you should say it everywhere you go.
It's on
Yeah,
my website.
that's
Um,
good.
yeah, so thank you. I just
Thanks for
sometimes
having me.
I get so excited I forget to say it.
I get
Um,
it.
yeah, so I need a little coach, following me around. Hey,
Right.
tagline, tagline, tagline.
Tagline now.
Yeah, it's like my one friend, everywhere we go, she always tells people, "Hey, Mary Grace has a show." And I always right, and then she goes, "Here, Mary Grace, get your card out, get your card."
You need her everywhere.
I know, that's Caroline. So, yeah, I need a Caroline to be following me around and saying, "Hey, do your tagline."
Exactly.
Um, so, but listen, let's talk about your tagline because you have done something incredible, really out of what I would say is a desire to stay fresh, to stay relevant, to keep yourself moving forward in life. Um, and I can't tell your story the way you can, but can you give us like a brief synopsis of your story, and then let's jump into a message for today. How
Sure.
about let's do that? Okay.
Great. My story goes back to before I was double digits, and I had an issue, not issue, I had a dream to be a gymnast, an Olympic gymnast when I was 9. That dream didn't work out because my coach just didn't think I was ever going to make it and decided to tell a little 9-year-old to go pursue something else. And when I had that realization, I remember going home and decided that if I couldn't be an elite Olympic gymnast, that I, instead of pouring all of my time every day, every week into gymnastics, that I was going to pursue one new hobby or skill every single year for 365 days. And then I would start a new one the next year in pursuit of what it was that I was called to do or what I was going to be really good at if gymnastics wasn't going to be the thing. So I started on my 10th birthday, the first week of the year. My birthday's the 5th of January.
Happy
And
birthday.
oh, thank you. And I decided to start a new hobby and did not know where that was going to take me, but it has been 45 years of doing different hobbies, a different one every year.
Wow.
And little did I know that the no that I got from my gymnastics coach to go to the next level was going to be the yes to really unlocking the, as we talked earlier, the paralysis of just staying stuck in one thing and not exploring. And honestly, so anyhow, back to the story. So I did that years and years. And at the end of every year, I would say, okay, is this what I'm called to do? And I did everything, name whatever it is. I
Okay,
mean, my
tell it. I know you did roller skating. Was that one of them? Roller
ice skating.
Oh,
Um,
ice skating. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
My
What
first year
else?
at 10 years old, I decided that I was going to learn the Russian language. My family, great grandparents are from Russia. And so
Okay.
every day I learned Russian, which really led into eventually going to Russia, spending a summer there, learning it in college and high school. And then I have done every art you can think of, acrylic painting. I've done every musical instrument. I have learned how to play poker. I mean, breakdancing every year. And I just do it. I mean, I shoot for 10 minutes a day, but usually it winds up being more than that. But at the end of every year, I always was looking like, is this what I am meant to do in life? And if it wasn't, I would, it's not like I would stop doing it. Everything just kept piling up. And, by the time I was 30, I had all of these hobbies, but not a skill that I felt like was my purpose.
Mhm.
I mean, I learned how to do magic for a year. I was a great entertainer at parties, but not
Yeah.
anything that I just felt like it was right in the center of what God had created me for.
Like that
And
burning passion,
yeah,
right?
and when people ask the question, well, how do you know what that is? It's sort of like asking the question, how do you know when you're in love? I mean, you just know, because work doesn't feel like work. You stop dreading Mondays in the way that you had before, because it just becomes your life. It's not like work and then life is just your life. So
Mm.
when I in my late 20s, I thought, well, I think perhaps I'm meant to be an attorney. My dad was, his name was Bernie. They called him Bernie the attorney. And I thought, I'll go into practice with my dad.
Yeah.
And during my first year of law school, my dad died. And so I took a year off, and then I thought, you know what, he would want me to finish. So I became an attorney and did that, and thought, this is not, I do dread Mondays. This is not my calling. The best part about being an attorney was the beautiful red chair my husband bought me when I passed the bar. And if that is the best part about being an attorney, to have a good office chair, then you're definitely in the wrong profession.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then I had the opportunity to become an adjunct law professor, and I thought, that's it. That's what I'm called to do. Not do divorce law or family law. I'm called to be a professor. And no, that I loved it, but just it was not the thing. And it's not like I ever felt like any of those things were wasted. I just knew I
Mhm.
was created for something. So, long story short, I had two little girls, and took a sabbatical from teaching law. And during that time, actually before my girls were born, I wound up in a crazy series of events. Wound up going to the Oprah Winfrey Show, because she was one that knew what she was called to do. And instead of going to the show, I wound up being on the show for a. They were looking for people who regifted, and I was a consummate regifter. And so I wrote Oprah a letter and said, hey, I'm a regifter, here's some funny stories. Well, as it turns out, they had me on the show during this quest looking for my calling. And I didn't know that I was going to find my calling there, but I had a sense that this was going to be the end of my law career. I don't know how sometimes you just have this inner
Mhm.
sense that something is going to happen.
Yeah.
And when I got to the show, I just remember thinking, Oprah knows what she is called to do, because she does it so well. And it is, you just, you can look at people and say, they wake up and say, oh, I get to go do this thing that I'm called to
Mhm.
do, not I have
Mhm.
to. And I wanted to get out of the realm of have to. So as I'm on the show, I'm sitting next to Oprah, and we're talking about regifting. And it turns out they had some etiquette experts on there that didn't think regifting was such a great idea. And in front of 20 million people, decided to tell me that what I was doing was really wrong and tacky and rude. And that I was so humiliated on the show. I remember leaving it thinking, I all I am is in pursuit of this calling. Why did I just go to the lowest valley I've ever been by being humiliated on TV? And I told my husband, I said, I have this really, really strong feeling that whatever happened on that stage just now had to happen in order for me to get over the bridge, to get to what I'm called to do. Even as painful as that was. And it aired 3 times that year. And it was, I mean, it was humiliating. And I remember people would say, oh, you look so familiar, after they'd watched the show. And I knew they were an Oprah watcher. And I just thought, uh, I don't ever want to have anything to do with the world of regifting, TV, or anything ever again, because all I was doing was looking for this calling anyhow. I got home and I remember thinking that I'm going to stop doing all of these hobbies. If doing hobbies led me to this stage of being humiliated,
Mhm.
um, so I 5 years later, I just decided, okay, I have to forgive these girls on stage who told me that, I was tacky and rude, and the second that I said, "Okay, I let it go, I forgive them," it was like this thing lifted off of me when I forgave, even though they didn't know they had really done anything wrong. I got this idea to start creating, and I got this idea from God to make bracelets, teach myself how to make bracelets and put words of hope on it that I wished I would have had over the last 5 years of being disappointed or losing hope for finding that thing.
Amazing.
And so I was then in my early 40s, and that's what I did. I got up and I taught myself how to make bracelets that night. The minute I said I forgive them, I felt free, and I started creating, and then created this little company called Rustic Cuff, and did exactly what the idea was, and made engraved and stamped all kinds of words of hope on bracelets, and started giving them away. And the more I gave away, the more people bought. And um, and then the way that I knew finally that I had discovered what it was that I was called to do was I walked into a grocery store, gave away my first bracelet to a girl who immediately started to cry. And she said, I've never seen you before, but yesterday I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And um, and when I was in the doctor's office, I prayed that God would give me a sign of hope that I was going to make it. And she said, "Thanks for being the sign of hope." And I looked down at this bracelet that I had just kind of taken off my wrist without even looking. And it was a pink bracelet. And she just cried and said, "Thanks for being the sign of hope." And I got in my car that day and said, I know what I'm called to do. I'm called to give away hope every single day. And it just so happens that the last going on 14 years have been through bracelets, but it could be anything. And I don't think that any of those things that led me to that point were wasted. So that's the short story of how Rustic Cuff got started.
And this I've got your website up
Oh,
here. It's just yeah, I love the colors. It's so fresh. It's so
mm,
so beautiful. And this is to me, it's amazing because I mean, I talk to people all the time, and I hear people's stories of what they've gone through. Everybody has had setbacks. Everybody has had their dreams shattered. Everybody has gone through somebody humiliating them. I mean,
mm,
if you've lived like past the age of 5, you've had that, right?
yeah,
Especially as
yeah,
a girl, because girls can be ruthless. And as a former teacher, I know that. I mean, it starts early. And so, but there's something in people that makes them either lay down and die or go forward.
yeah.
And as you said earlier when we were talking, get unstuck. And so I think today I wanna focus on that because you spent a lifetime acquiring knowledge, acquiring hobbies, acquiring these skills with the hope of knowing what your calling was. And it wasn't until you actually got, like, kicked down, that you got to a place where you figured it out.
Mm,
But you were stuck for a while.
yeah.
Right? And I think a lot of people listening can relate to that, especially when you have other things going on in your life. I mean, sometimes you have to compartmentalize, and so that dream part of you gets stuck because you're
Mhm.
in the practical things of life. But something that you said that was so key was um you basically shut the door on all of that, and then one day it came to you, it's up to me, and
Yeah.
the forgiveness piece came in. I
Yeah.
wanna talk a little bit more about that because so many people get into I guess, like a victim mindset
Mhm.
and they get stuck, and, you know, what is their calling? What is God's destiny on their life? And how do they get there? You had to
Yeah.
do something very specific to get unstuck. I want to talk about that.
So whether it's two girls on the stage at Oprah, or whether it's somebody who got the job you wanted, or somebody who married the person you thought you were going to, uh, all of those people in our lives are basically dream stealers. Whether they're intending to or not, they become what we see as dream stealers. And when that happens to us, the disappointment gets us to a place that, if we don't understand that really it, they can be part of our story and not the end of our story, um, we get stuck. And so what I was thinking for the years after I was on the show, what I was thinking is that I needed closure in order to be able to move forward. I had to have closure, or I'm going to stay right here, stuck in this disappointment. And many, many, many times we don't get an apology. We don't get the closure, or we don't have an understanding of why it happened. And when you get to the point that you give up your right to understand everything, and you give up this thing you're holding onto, thinking you're going to somehow be vindicated by these dream stealers. If you are holding onto that, you have to have this picture in your mind that you're wearing a backpack. And every time you don't let something go, or you try to figure something out, you're putting these really heavy rocks into a backpack. And imagine going on a hike, the hike of life, and you're
Mhm.
carrying heavy rocks. And every time, small or big, that something happens to you, you internalize it and don't let it go, and you're waiting for the apology or waiting for the understanding. Your
Yeah.
backpack is actually going to become so heavy that forward movement becomes impossible.
Wow.
And 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 you can look at people and see their invisible backpack. I have very, very short conversations sometimes with people, and I think you've got a lot of rocks, of weight in that backpack. And then the opposite is true. You can look at somebody and say, you live an unoffendable life, where you look at things and think, how can I use this to keep moving forward, instead of staying stuck in what becomes just this quicksand of resentment.
Mhm.
So that was years for me. And I didn't even realize, a lot of times what happens to people is, if you're listening to this, you're thinking, that's not me. Well, it's not like everybody recognizes that about themselves right away. And you have what's called, you're sleeping on the inside, when you're going through all the motions of life, but really you're just asleep. You're not even, you're numb to everything, because you've
Mhm.
sort of built this wall up, and you don't even know it until you become alive again. And then you look back and you think, oh, wow, I didn't know I was carrying all that weight, because I feel so free now. So after 5+ years of feeling like what a waste all of these hobbies have been, because it got me to a place of just embarrassment. And really, actually, I don't care about being embarrassed. I can fall in front of a lot of people. I can have tags on my clothes. I Whatever it is. But it's disappointment that gets you. The
Mhm.
embarrassment, you can move past it. And after 5 years of feeling disappointed, um I remember I woke up and I said, you know what? If I keep holding this, then whatever it is that I am really called to do will not be realized. It just won't be realized. And I will miss it. And perhaps someday when I stand before God, he'll say, you were close. You just needed to let it go. Forgive those who don't even give you an apology, or don't even know that they offended you, and you will be free. And when I said it, I said, I forgive these dream stealers. Something physically happened to me. These rocks lifted, and I just, looking back, I think I have this saying called "mourn the moment without memorializing it." And there are bad and really awful and disappointing things that happen to people, and there is no reason why we shouldn't, like, process through it and try to, sort it out and figure it out, and all of those things. But there comes a time where you have to say, I'm done mourning this thing that happened, and I'm not going to memorialize it. Meaning, I'm not going to keep going back to that, build this memorial, because if you keep going back to that thing that happened to you, then your body is turned the wrong way and you cannot get forward movement. So I think my more in the moment
Mm.
without memorializing it lasted way longer than it did. Now I set, when if things happen to me like throughout the day and I'm like, and I keep thinking about it, whatever it is, I I set my clock. Like, let's say, before this podcast, let's say something happened. I said something really stupid, and I allow myself a moment to go, okay, Jill, that was really dumb. You shouldn't have gone there. And I will set my clock like for 2 hours from now, and I allow myself 2 hours to talk about it, process it, and then at the end of 2 hours, when the alarm goes off, it's done. I don't want to memorialize it because it will affect the rest of my day, my week, my year for that thing that I said or did. And
Mhm.
so you said compartmentalizing earlier, and it is a way of compartmentalizing, but really it's a way of moving forward and not ever looking back at that,
Mhm.
unless you do it from like a teaching standpoint where you're trying to tell somebody else. So
Mhm.
there's no sense in talking about getting unstuck to people if they are not willing to forgive somebody that hasn't given an apology. And there also is no sense in talking to anybody about getting unstuck if they are adamant about trying to understand why somebody did something to them or why something happened to them. There are things we will never know or understand, and you got to give up the right. If you want to move forward in life and understand what it is you are called to do for that season, you have to give up your right to get an apology or to understand things.
Mm.
So,
Wow, wow, this is so good. And so Lisa in the Facebook, she said, "This is so good. This is great info." So I know we'll get a lot of people on the replay, and I want to ask everybody when you come in on the replay, please tell us how this is resonating with you. Let us know in the comments. If you've had a situation like this where you had this aha moment and realized, I need to offload the rocks of unforgiveness or resentment or my need to understand. Because this is, I'm taking so many nuggets from what you're saying,
mm,
because, I can be one of those people that gets bogged down in the niggly stuff, right?
yeah,
And the Bible talks about the little foxes in the vineyard. And I think that's what you're talking about. It's sometimes it's not the big thing, even it's the little stuff that you
yeah,
allow to live rent free in your head. And so then you're giving away all this real estate, right? This emotional real estate that saps your energy.
yeah,
When you talked about the difference between compartmentalizing and just moving on, I had this picture of that backpack you're talking about. Have you seen those trucks where you can open the back and then
yeah,
they tip it a little bit and everything just falls out?
yeah,
It's kinda like that, like when we get a load of mulch, right? They open the back of the truck and everything just slides out.
right.
That's what I picture, is that you're not even taking everything out. It's that process of forgiving and deciding to move on. You just hit a lever and then everything offloads.
Yeah,
And your load becomes so much lighter because that's the way we're created and designed to be. So I love this. Now, I want to ask you about, women in particular. We are designed differently, in spite of what some people would say. Uh, do you find when you're working with people and interacting, especially with entrepreneurs, do you see a difference in the way that women process and the way that they go into business and or any endeavor really? Is that something that you see? Because I feel like women carry so many things in any given
yeah,
day, right?
yeah.
I
That I'm in a women's world, being, doing jewelry,
Yeah, yeah.
and I have all women that work here. But I am married to an entrepreneur,
Okay.
And um, I feel like women tend to internalize, this may be a very broad overgeneralization, but
That's
I
okay.
feel like we tend to internalize things in a much different way, and like you said, we tend to hold on to things longer, it feels like. And we also feel, it feels like, and maybe I'm just speaking for me, we are more offendable in a quicker fashion than men are.
Mm.
Men seem to not, I feel like, I mean, talking about men and the differences, I'm just talking about from my spouse who's an entrepreneur as
Yeah.
and me, but things don't affect him in the same way because feels like he's less offendable. But I love that and I learn from that. But I think when you are an entrepreneur or whatever it is that you do, if you live a life of being unoffendable,
Mhm.
realizing that the reason that people do things to you in the first place is most of the time is coming from a strong base of insecurity from somebody else. And when you begin to see people how God sees them, you stop looking at them like, why it, like it's all about you, why did you do this to me? they there's so many, we are all flawed, but when you see them how God sees them, you begin to walk through life in a more unoffendable way, and you don't even have to pull rocks out of your backpack because you don't put them in there in the first
Mm.
place. I see people that you, I mean, I carry, this is crazy, but I have this paper shredder, this portable paper shredder, and I got the idea years ago. I had my whole team here write down one person that when that would disrupt their peace mentally. If you're having
Mhm.
a great day and then you see this person, does it bring back memories or disrupt your peace? Write that person down, because if they're still disrupting your peace and you haven't talked to them in years, that may be somebody that you need to forgive. And I had
Mhm.
everybody write a name down or names and then come up to the paper shredder as an act of, I let this go and I am shredding this. And we did that. And I can't tell you what just doing the act of that
Mhm.
does for you. And so I carry this paper shredder. And even for small things, you come and you get cut off in traffic. You can tell the person who lives unoffendable because they're not walking in the office telling everybody about the schmuck who just cut them off as they were coming into the office.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I love being around people who are undefendable because I'm not having to second guess every action that I'm doing or saying. And I want to be one of those people. I don't want you to be
Mm.
around me and be paranoid. And to live a life of being unoffendable definitely takes practice, but you first examine the rocks that you have in your backpack. And that examining, the examining of it, people
Yeah.
don't want to do. They talk about moving forward, but they don't look at what they're carrying. And by doing that, it's like if you've ever been to counseling, you it's hard before it gets good. If you're going to lose weight, it's hard to step on the scale. It's really hard in the beginning to get naked and see all of these things. That's what it's like when you pull these things out of your backpack, things you've been carrying since fifth grade. But once you get past that hard, it is more freeing than anything you have experienced because you didn't even know that you were carrying it. And so people ask me, well, but you don't know what, or they say, you don't know what has happened to me. Like you don't know what I have been through in life. And you're right, I don't. And we've all been through things. And how do I forgive that? Because what does that even mean? How can I get free of that? And I tell them every single Monday I would forgive the same people that would still disrupt my peace. And even though I haven't seen them in
Okay.
10 years,
Yeah.
every Monday I would shred their names again. And you keep doing that until you don't have to do that. And I have a really close friend named Susie, and she said, Jill, you cannot hate somebody that you sorry, how'd she say that? When you pray for people that have wronged you, you cannot hate them in the way that you have before. It's not possible. You begin to
Mhm.
pray for them and you see them
Yeah.
differently. And I have absolutely been wronged, as we all have. And the last person I want to wish well upon is somebody who has hurt me or my children or my husband or anything. I don't want to. I absolutely don't want to. But I know that when I do, oh my gosh, there is something that changes inside of me.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
want to live freely. And I want everybody around me to experience that same freedom. And the only way you can do it is by sitting
Yeah.
down, looking through your backpack and say, nothing else in life matters if I can't move forward. Just it
Mhm.
doesn't. Can't
Mhm.
help your kids, you can't help your grandkids, you can't help anybody if you are stuck.
Mhm. This is so powerful, and I was thinking about what you said earlier when you said that you can tell when you encounter somebody who has a full backpack versus somebody who has an empty backpack. What kinds of things do you see in those
Mm,
people that have a full backpack, full of rocks
mm,
and, that are burdened by whether it's unforgiveness or unmet expectations, disappointment. What are some of those characteristics that you see in people? And I'm hoping as people are listening that they can prayerfully identify things in themselves because this
mm.
is about growth. We're not about
Yeah,
judging. We're about growth
right,
today
right.
and getting unstuck. So what is it that stands out in those people?
There, first of all, there's a lack of some warmth in people
Okay.
because they're hurting on the inside,
Hmm.
even if they can't identify it. And what you have on the inside is what comes out from you, is what
Right.
emanates
Right.
from you. And when I see somebody with just a lack of connection and warmth, I I know that there has to be something on the inside that they absolutely don't want to connect with
Hmm.
people. The other thing is a biting tongue. Somebody critical of strangers, people that they don't know or do know. I look at that, what they're saying, the comments they're making, and I think that's coming from somewhere. And not to say that everybody that criticizes somebody is, is living in a world of hurt, but typically when you see people who are extremely critical of others and tearing people down, even if it's somebody on the news, there's something inside of them that makes them um, feel a little better about doing that. And
Mm.
that then goes deeper, like, well, why does that make you feel better? Because you're holding on to something that you need to let go.
Mhm.
um and yeah, it's a sense that it's just a sense that you can get when somebody is not genuinely happy for your success. They are holding on to something within them that, perhaps is a rock, that they can't be happy for you because they're holding on to some resentment, even if it's resentment towards themselves for missing the mark on something. That's another thing, is forgiving yourself.
Mm.
You may have no resentment against somebody else, but it may be all towards you and something that you did that you cannot let go of. And on that, I would say more in that moment, and then move on.
Mhm.
You've got to move
Mhm.
on. If you want to live that life that you're really called to live, then forgive yourself first. And
Mhm.
I tell my kids, I have two teenagers, my girls, and I say, you're not going to understand why this is happening right now. Like, I can't understand it. And I've lived 35 years longer than you have. You are not going to understand it. But
Mhm.
if you get stuck in the trying to understand it, you're going to become one of those people that, um, give the characteristics that I just told you, because you're
Okay,
just
okay.
stuck. Focusing on you. We're so focused on us.
Mhm.
Unselfish people. Those are the people that I say, wow, you seem like you aren't holding on to things because you're able to give to others.
Right, right. Interesting. So, I there's another scenario, that's coming up in the chat, which I think is interesting. When you're in a position where you have somebody that won't forgive you.
Mm,
For whether it's a perceived
mm,
wrong where, somebody is trying to hold you hostage to
yeah,
something that they think you did wrong, something
yes,
that right, that whatever I mean, we all have that. I mean, it's like, especially the longer we live, we have, like, that former friend who is holding something over our head, and we may not even know what it is, but
yeah,
it's hurtful, or a
yeah.
family member. Have you come across that?
That is such a great, great point. Um, I had to let some people go in 2020. And I mean, I had 200 employees like before 2020. And when you're an entrepreneur and you are a leader of all of these people and all of these, um, showrooms and all of these things, you have to make decisions that sometimes don't work out well for people.
Mhm.
And I hired all of my friends. I mean, a lot of friends. And throughout the course of the last 14 years, you have to make really tough decisions. Whether you're a parent, entrepreneur, grandparent, it doesn't matter. You have to make tough decisions. And you are going to offend people intentionally or unintentionally. You don't,
Mhm.
it's not like I wasn't trying to offend the people I had to let go. But what I had to learn, and it's taken years, but this is just as freeing. I have to give up the right to be understood because I'm the kind of person I want everybody to get it and say, oh, Jill, okay, I've not been an entrepreneur. I've not been in your spot, but I totally understand why you had to decide that. And I had to I would pick up the phone and try to get people to understand that, like, I would break up with somebody in college who then would turn around and get really mad at me, a boyfriend, and I would then almost want to get back together with them just so they wouldn't be mad at me. Right? Like,
Mhm.
I want you to
Mhm.
like, you're mad at me. Okay, I'll get back together with you. And I realized I have to let go of this ideal situation that everybody's going to understand why I'm doing the things that I'm doing and not try to go and fix everybody and everything and or explain myself for everything. I don't
Mhm.
have to explain myself. If I am walking in obedience to what I know I'm called to do, not everybody around me is ever going to understand that. They weren't called to and they didn't hear the
Mhm.
same thing that I did. The time and energy emotionally spent on trying to get somebody else to get what you got in the understanding realm of like why I did this is absolutely a waste of time. And it will distract you from what you are meant to now be doing. And
Mhm.
I spent years trying to make all these things right from people who were never going to see it. Never, ever, ever. What a
Mhm.
waste of time. Even though I still love those
Yeah.
people that may have been wronged, but
Yeah.
I gave up that right. I gave up the right to be understood.
Mhm.
And my time is freer.
It's
Most
interesting. Yeah, one of the most freeing things I ever learned was that you don't owe people an explanation, and that's not always the case. I mean, you we do have an obligation to certain people, like your spouse, right?
right. Right.
And but what I learned is that we have people that we're responsible for and people that we're responsible to.
Mm,
And so, like, when you understand that, like, as a teacher, I was responsible for little people, but I didn't actually owe them an explanation for when did things and made decisions to do certain things. People that you're responsible to, that you're in deep committed relationship, yeah, there are times when you do have to explain, right?
right.
You don't just change a date or change your mind about something and go just because, right?
Yeah.
But for example, like if you have to reschedule or if you can't do lunch with somebody, all you have to say is, "That's not gonna work." Or, "How" or "I don't think so," or, "How about this date?" You don't have to give them your entire schedule and say, "Well, I've got this going on and this going on." You don't have to justify your existence, just to have that interaction. And
Yeah.
right, that freed me up so much to be able to have an unencumbered communication,
Yeah.
and take that pressure off of myself to perform a certain way and to get that approval. It was like there's some
Mm,
kind of approval thing where you think, "Well, I have to justify why it is that I'm not able to be there," or,
yeah.
I'm gonna honor my time and my commitment and, my own work, whatever it is, but they don't
Yeah.
actually need to know. They don't you don't owe people an explanation. I don't know if I
No, that's
articulated
really
that.
good. But for people pleasers, you want everybody to say, "Oh, she's in Africa next week and that's why she can't get together." But
Yeah.
we project on them that if we don't tell them a reason, we project that they're going to say, "Who does she think she is that she's canceling,
Yeah.
our lunch?" And I tend to project because I want them to say, "Okay, I get it."
Mhm.
And for example, I'll get asked for a speaking engagement and I can't for whatever reason. And I will tell Renee, my assistant, I'll say, "Okay, can you tell them this, this, and this?" And she said, all you have to do is just say, "No, thank you, but no, I can't do that." And I say, "But I want them to understand
Yeah, yeah.
exactly what's happening because I will project onto them that they are then going to think, what a diva that she can't accept this
Mhm.
engagement." And you're absolutely right. Like less is often more,
Yeah.
and I will give you all of the details about everything because I want Mary Grace to then leave and think, "Oh, what a nice girl. She doesn't,
Mhm.
she gave me this information. She doesn't think she's all that." And so I have tended in the past to go overboard with sharing too much. And I think there's a good balance of,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah. I
between that.
the 3 words that have helped me so much is something's come up. You know?
Something that's from the Brady Bunch. You remember Marsha Brady?
Yeah,
Something suddenly
something's
came
come
up.
up, something came up, and yeah, that's it, that's whatever it is, right? Whether
Yeah,
it's, like a crazy situation with my dad, or whether it's just, I would rather prioritize my work right now,
yeah,
right? And so it's not always a something that's gonna make that person happy, but it's
right.
not my job to make people happy.
No,
So that's been very freeing for me
that's good.
to learn that. And,
Yeah,
I think as an entrepreneur, as somebody who's out in the public all the time, there is that desire, like, not to have people hate you, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
We're
So we
losing your volume.
overshare.
I don't know what happened. Hold on just a second. Did you hit your speaker button somehow?
No, you
Hit
don't
the
have.
volume on the side of your iPad and see what if it went down. Sometimes my iPhone will just turn me down.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Okay. Let's see.
did it? Did the volume go down?
No. Can you hear me now?
Oh, well, I heard you and then I lost you again.
Can you hear me now? It
Barely.
says that's
Hold
weird.
on a second. Let
Uh,
me just make sure it's not my headset that's coming out. I've had that happen.
It says network
Uh,
connection 10 of
okay.
10. Good.
We're back. We're back. We're
Okay.
back.
We're back. People, we're
Uh,
back.
okay, perfect. Yay. All right. Speaking of back, let's take a quick break. And then if you're okay, we'll come back and talk for about another 10 or 15 minutes.
Okay.
And if anybody, we don't have a big live audience right now, but I will, if it's okay with you, we'll open up for a couple of questions
Sure.
for people who are here. Um, and uh, and let's keep our questions brief. And we'll see, especially for somebody who is wanting if you're thinking that you wanna go in a new direction this year, right? If you're having if you have a dream and you haven't started it, be thinking about that while we're doing the, commercial break, and then also think about, like, how can I get unstuck? If there's something specific that you're going through, let's talk about that. We'll be right back. I wanna remind everybody that we are listener supported, and, if you missed hearing about today's show, it's probably because you weren't on the email list. So go to marygracemedia.com get on the mailing list, but also when you go over there, click on the shopping link. We have so many partners that love us and that are here to support us without actually trying to control our content, which we love. In other words, we don't have big pharma in our breathing down our necks. And so go over there, click on the shopping link, go to the businesses. We're highlighting 3 specific businesses today, and we're going to run these ads. And hopefully, you will jump on board and make a purchase from one of these companies. When you do, it helps support Mary Grace Media directly. We'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Jordan, and this is my brother.
And I'm Nace, and we're the Grid Down Chowdown. And this is Larry, who is a local rancher that we've partnered with.
Now, Larry, you've been ranching for over 4 generations, is that correct?
That's correct. I'm 3rd generation, my son's 4th generation, and I've got some grandkids that are 5th generation.
Man, that's awesome.
We've been here for quite a while, yeah.
All right, now, Larry, your cattle is grass-fed, grass-finished, and pasture-raised, just like God intended them to be.
Yes, because I want to know what's in that animal.
Right.
What it's been fed. And so the only way to do that is for us to keep it all natural, just like God has done it for years and years and years, thousands of years.
How has partnering up with us helped you and your ranch?
Well, it's allowed us to develop a market that we didn't have before, one that can get directly to the consumer, and that's great.
And just remember, more importantly, with every package that you buy, we put a salvation track in there. So from the bottom of our hearts, we thank you for allowing us to do what we believe that God has us here to do. And just remember, God loves you. He really does.
Amen.
Go to griddownchowdown.com. Americans spend more now than ever on healthcare, and we're sicker than almost anybody in the world. We've put our trust in a system that's completely let us down. Dr. Troy Sproul and the team at Synapse Center for Health and Healing have changed all that. They are a functional medicine clinic, and they get to the root cause of what's made you sick in the first place. Once they do that, they give you solutions to help you get out of that. This is the way that medicine was meant to be practiced, and this is what they're doing. They're changing the entire system from the inside out, one person at a time, and you could be one of those people. And so when you're working with the team at Synapse, they're giving you solutions and not just prescriptions. That's a game changer for me. When you set up a free discovery call with Synapse, you're starting on a journey of healing. You're starting on a journey of getting answers. And that's why I've partnered with them, because I want you to be healthy. I want your family to be healthy. I want you to have all of the resources that you need to steward the body and the health that God's given you. Go to officialsynapse.com and tell them Mary Grace sent you. That's Official Synapse, SYNAPSE.
Just like all of you, I had problems sleeping. I had tried every pillow out there and nothing worked. I'd flip-flop all night, use my arm for support, and fall asleep, or I'd wake up with a sore neck or maybe a headache. Well, quality sleep comes from keeping your neck straight at night. You have to fill in that space between your head and your bed. That's why I invented My Pillow. My Pillow's patented fill adjusts to your exact individual needs, and it doesn't matter if you sleep on your back, stomach, side, or any combination of all 3.
When I got My Pillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get Classic King My Pillows for only $19.98. Queen size just $18.98. Standard Classic My Pillows only $14.98. That's right, only $14.98. Plus all orders $75 or more.
We are back. Everybody, remember, if you forgot any of what you just saw, go to my website, marygracemedia.com, click on the shopping tab, and you can go directly to our merchants. We are highlighting this month our friends at griddownchowdown.com. This is meat. It's American freeze-dried beef. It comes in these little packets, and this is real beef. This is not jerky. It's actual ground beef. When you rehydrate this, you have ground beef that you can use for cooking, or you can keep it in your apocalypse supply because it lasts like 25 years. This is a whole pound of ground beef. this month, anybody who gets their 24 serving subscription, it's like a subscribe and save, they're going to give you 4 free servings. Just make sure you mention Mary Grace as your referral code. We've had a lot of people jumping on this deal. It's a great deal. Get the 24 serving monthly subscription and you get 4 servings for free. You're going to get a discount anyway when you shop, but this is a new offer and it's only through the month of January. So jump on over there. You're also helping save American farms and ranchers when you buy from this company. Now we're back here with our friend Jill Donovan. She is talking to us today as an entrepreneur, as a female woman-owned business. She has overcome a lot to get where she is. And so we're talking today about getting unstuck. And if we're one of the things I wanted to ask you is I want to talk about like belief, because I think something that happens with people when they start working on a project, especially people who have maybe a little bit of ADD, it's easy to go down rabbit trails and start new things. And I think there's an underlying thing that has to do really with belief. Maybe some people call
Mhm.
it imposter syndrome. I mean, your bracelets are in on the arms of huge influencers, right? Oprah's friend Gayle King, wore your bracelet. Your bracelet showed up on Oprah's wrist on one of her photo shoots. So, do you ever struggle with belief, like that little voice that says, "Who are you to do this?"
Mm,
How do you qualify to run,
yeah.
in this league?
I really am the least qualified to be an entrepreneur because I never wanted to do it, had no desire to do it. That I often felt like I was called to build an ark with instructions for a canoe. So not only did I really have no
Mm,
business starting this, but I really didn't know, there was no handbook or manual how to do all of this,
mhm,
unqualified. And if that feeling ever creeps up, all I do is remind myself that arc wasn't built all at once, unless you're a magician like I
mhm.
was for 1 year. The arc is only
Yeah.
built by saying, what plank today do I need to then nail to something
Mm,
else that I've already done? And I can handle one plank a day. I don't need to understand
mm,
how it's going to work on the backside of this, when I get to that next year. If I look at it as this massive thing that I have to create or that I'm called to create, I won't start. I just won't, because I get
mhm,
paralyzed in the thought of what is ahead of me. But when I look at it from the perspective of, have I done today what I am meant to do for today?
mm.
And then it doesn't seem so overwhelming. I don't get so stuck because I've broken it down into this small bite-sized piece of
Okay.
just the next thing I have to do.
Mhm,
Any hobby, when people start hobbies, they always, they're like, they have big dreams. And then by about week 3, they're like, this is, or a new skill, this is too hard. Or I don't want to do it. It takes up too much time. And I don't look at it of starting something that's going to be massive, even though it may turn out to be massive. I look at it from a 10-minute standpoint from today. What can I do towards that new skill that I chose this year
mm,
for 10 minutes today? Because at the end of the year, I will have gained 60 hours, a little over 60 hours of knowledge and an expertise about something that I knew nothing about, and more than that, probably most people around me have.
mhm,
And if I
mhm,
don't do that daily, if I don't put that plank down daily, then I will be in this exact same spot a year from now. It's the greatest way. They should make
mm,
all kids do this starting at like a young age. They should make all kids do one thing a day for a year in 10 minutes.
mhm, mhm,
Because what happens, Mary Grace, is you wind up getting this confidence in yourself because you are completing projects instead of abandoning everything that you get an idea to do. And I also say, one of the things that my friend Carol tells me, she's like, Jill, you have this really, really great say do ratio. And I said, what does that mean? She said, well, you say, hey, I want to try this. And then you don't let a lot of time pass before you do it, even if you don't know how to do it. Your say
Mhm.
do ratio, it's so close that if you allow too much time to pass, you talk yourself out of it.
Right.
So
Oh, yeah.
when you get an idea
Yeah.
and you say, I'd like to try this, go ahead and do it. Do it for 10 minutes a day. And somebody says, well, I want to start a company. I can't start that in 10 minutes a day. I say, yeah, you can, because for 10 minutes a day, you can start researching and throwing yourself into the subject of what it is you want to
Mhm.
start. Don't
Mhm.
say, I'll start on the 1st of next month. Start today, 10 minutes. And by
Mhm.
it's really amazing
Wow.
what it does for your self-confidence, because you keep completing these things. John Maxwell gave this great analogy that I have not forgotten, or this story. He said, if you go into your backyard and there's this really big tree and you want to cut it down, and you go back there with an axe and you try to cut this massive tree down, like you're going to get frustrated, and you know, you don't have the tool to be able to do that. But if every single day you went out and in the same spot, you kept hitting that, well, it is eventually, I mean, it may take a while for a big tree, but if you keep hitting the same thing,
Mhm.
it's going to fall down. You're going to accomplish it. If you're hitting up here, hitting down here, you're never making a groove
Right,
strong enough
right.
or deep enough to accomplish that. So even if you don't want to, I used to, I'm sorry, I'm continuously talking, Mary Grace, and because I have
No, no,
another
no.
thought.
This is so good. This is so good. I'm thinking about Mr. Miyagi, right? Wax on,
Yeah.
wax off, wax on.
Yes.
But that's the idea. This is so, especially for people like me who don't finish things, right?
No. Yeah.
And then you carry all of that judgment and guilt, and you have this project or that project or things
Yeah.
that you started but didn't finish, and this is a kind of, like, I've heard of time blocking, but the way that you're explaining it
Yeah.
is giving me this aha moment, like, "Oh,
Yeah.
okay."
You lose
That
trust.
yeah.
You lose this trust in yourself. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No,
Um,
no, no, keep going. You're on fire.
You lose a trust
Good.
in yourself if you keep starting things and not finishing them, to the point where you stop saying you're going to do anything because you know that you won't. But
Mm,
breaking it down to this little bite size um, pieces, at the end of we had our team, I gave them all 3 bracelets, and we all picked 3 things towards a bigger goal, or 3 separate things. And at the end of finishing that goal that day, they had to transfer the bracelet from the right to the left. And we made this commitment that we would not go to sleep at night if all 3 bracelets were not transferred. And because it would
wow.
remind you, like, oh, I can't go to bed until I do those 100 push-ups. But the hobby that I chose this year would be really easy for me to give it up, because time, or it's hard. And I've been, what is today, the 8th? And so I've done it for 8 days, and I I am so excited, because that has been, what, 10 minutes. I've done more than 10 minutes a day, but I know more now by day 8, and have more confidence about this thing that I'm doing. And I'll tell you what it is, that it actually makes me want to push forward, instead of having sat and thought about it while I'm scrolling and not done it. Like, thinking about it is not doing it. Like,
Mhm.
I think about something for a whole year, I should not feel accomplished at all, because I did not actually do it. So I chose to, do you want me to tell you what it is? The
Yes.
hobby. I chose this year to memorize 1 line of classical piano each day, so that by the end of the year, I will be able to sit down, if I actually stick to it, and play from memory 2 hours of classical piano. I never really cared for classical piano. Never. I played the
Yeah.
piano, but I've never played classical piano. And in 10 minutes, I just sit and go over and over again. And then it means the next day I have to review the days before. But now I'm obsessed. Just in 8 days, with
Yeah.
classical piano, because I keep reminding myself, when you get to the end of the year, Jill, even if you had half of what you had planned, you will have an hour
Mhm.
of classical music memorized. And it doesn't matter what somebody picks, because the result is that you begin to gain trust in yourself. Whatever it is
Mm.
that you want to do, you gain trust in yourself that then trickles over to everything else in your life. Oh, I said I'll go to lunch with you. I usually cancel on you because I'm all about making plans and then canceling. But I trust myself that when I say I'm going to do something, I'll do it. And people begin trusting you more because you trust yourself, and your say do ratio is like, I say I'm going to do this and I'm
Right.
going to do it. So
Wow.
sorry,
Wow.
that was a long
That is
thought that just came streaming out.
that's like bonus life coaching right there. What piece are you memorizing right now?
Right now, I'm doing Claire de Lune. I don't even know if I'm saying that right. And it's hard. It's very, very hard to memorize that. But I started this. I started it because at Christmas I decided to memorize a piece and try to do it with my eyes closed, because it was written by Beethoven, and I was like, well, he's blind. He was blind when he wrote this, so I will try to do it like. And so I was so proud of myself. Did this whole memorization with my eyes closed, and I sat my husband down and I said, "You've got to see what I did by doing this every single day." And he said, "Jill, I think it's great, but Beethoven wasn't blind; he was deaf." And I was like, oh, what a waste of time. And then I was reminded that God doesn't waste anything in our
Yeah.
lives, even if we missed the boat by, like, he was deaf. I was sad for me and sad for him at the same time, that he couldn't hear his beautiful music. But now when I play, I am trying to learn it with my eyes closed, because it just adds a whole new element. Anyhow, my point is that nothing is wasted. And because
Mhm.
I've been doing
Mhm.
it every day, I'm
Mhm.
like, way to go, Jill. This means you can really do anything that you set your mind to because you trust yourself now.
Yeah. I have one question, a little bit of a pivot. As an entrepreneur, most people who do entrepreneurship are very independent. And when you start to grow and you bring in employees, how did you learn to be not only an entrepreneur, sort of a free flying, individual,
Mhm.
to owning a company and being a manager, managing people and building relationships within your company? That it feel to me, that seems like a really high trust type of issue. How
Yeah.
did you do that? Or were you just always good with people?
It is very, very difficult when you're managing that many people
Mhm,
and you want to have relationships with that many people and you want to connect with that many people, and yet all you long for is this creative side that you do. This
mhm.
is a full-time job to be a manager. That's why they hire managers. But
Yeah.
I didn't want the company to be manager, supervisor. I just wanted it to be, we all work together. I mean, it was, and
Mhm,
you learn the best by the mistakes that you make. But the very best advice that I would give any entrepreneur who's trying to do both, is that the people want connection with you. The people that work with you, they want connection. I mean, I don't do reviews, I don't do all the things. I want really good connections with the people that
mhm.
are on this team. But let me just say, you it's too overwhelming to try to make this perfect and that perfect. And I can't. I can't. I just want to treat all of the people on this team as I would treat them, um, in real life, as my friends. I don't want to treat them as employees and do
Mhm,
all of. I just want,
mhm,
how would I want to be treated, and how do I want them to feel at the end of the day? I want them to
mhm.
want to be here, and it's a time though. If you want to do something well, you have to devote time to it. And
Yeah.
I'm only one person, so yeah, I failed many times, but I have learned that, if you hire well in the first place, then you have a lot less issues.
Mhm.
You hire the people that we described earlier who are unoffendable and
Mm.
who have the warmth and who don't criticize. I asked the question in hiring, what is your biggest pet peeve? Because when I find out what your biggest pet peeve is, it tells me it tells me a lot about you and how you feel sometimes about others. And I have hired and not hired based on that one question, you know?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Like, what's an example of one that
yeah,
is a red
when
flag answer?
when they start off with, I can't stand when people chew their food really loud at at a booth next to me in the restaurant. Well, like if your first thought is, and also tell me more, and then the next thing is, I also can't stand when people do this. I can't stand when people. And
Mhm.
when I begin to probe into that, I realized I don't think I want you on this team because you're going to start not standing a lot of the things that are probably happening around you because this becomes
Mhm.
a small family here of women. And so
Yeah.
I you can tell a lot about a person by the things that really bother them and how they say it. It wasn't just always in the pet peeve, it was how they said what their pet peeve was.
Okay. Okay.
Um,
Interesting. Yeah.
and we all have this like sense of like who you want to be around every day and who you don't. And I have gotten talked into hiring certain people that my gut just knew, my knower, I knew I shouldn't have. And every time you try to talk yourself into it, but then the backside of that is very painful. So yeah, I would rather do this alone than do
Mhm.
it with people that I dread coming into the office for.
Right. Right.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I mean, you
Interesting.
when you've interviewed and hired hundreds and hundreds of people, you're obviously going to. It's not going to be all 10 for 10. It just isn't. But that's
Mhm.
where you learn. And
Right.
I've
Right.
learned a little bit of toxicity can, that you want it out. It's not worth.
Mhm.
It's just not worth your peace.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
One bad apple. It's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very.
It's like, I think Clay says, be slow to hire and quick to fire, right?
Yeah.
Just kinda cut
And
cut
both
the
of those you can't worry about being understood. When you're
mm,
firing somebody and you try to explain it, they just people aren't going to understand. But
mhm,
I want peace in my life and I want freedom, and so I am not
mm.
going to sacrifice that because I want to please the
Yeah.
person I'm.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's a big thing. I had a friend who I have a friend who owns a company, and there was an employee that worked for them during COVID, and it was one of those things where the employee was not on the same page with everybody,
right,
and they ended up filing a report against the company, because of, like, non-compliant one of those things,
yeah,
but
yeah,
then they couldn't be fired because they were protected, and it was
yeah,
just this kinda thing where it was like everybody knew the person should leave,
right,
and it made the culture so sticky and toxic, and, of course, the day that the prohibition was up, the person they let him go,
right,
but it was just one of those it was like a forced kind of like having a tar baby in your business that
yeah,
nobody could, let go of. It was like everybody was just stuck,
painful.
like a piece of gum on the bottom of your shoe that
That's a
you
good way.
couldn't get rid of, and
Yeah,
everybody's going, "Ugh." And it was just this, elephant in the room that nobody could they couldn't get rid of it. And
yeah,
so, it was almost a year where this toxicity was forced on them, you know?
long year.
Yeah, and it started out, as a good relationship, but as we know, people lost their minds,
Yeah, people lost their
and
mind.
and so it was unfortunate, but that kinda reminds me of what you're saying. It's like you just you wanna cut it off, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And that's something I think as a people pleaser, it becomes more difficult when
yeah,
you don't wanna hurt people's feelings, and then you don't want them to be unemployed, and you don't want them,
yeah,
right,
yeah,
to have to go through hardship or whatever, but you gotta do what you gotta do. So, uh,
yeah.
we've actually been talking quite a while here, and I could I want to pick your brain forever. Maybe I should just hire you as a coach.
Right.
Um, but is there anything else that you can leave us with? We didn't really have a lot of questions in the chat, so we're not going to dwell on that. But is there anything that you can leave our listeners with today? It's a new year. People are looking for there. We have a fresh new start happening in government. There's People are wanting to make change. I think there's an excitement in the air.
Mhm.
What can you leave our listeners with as we go into this year?
First, I would say pick something that you've never done before, but that you have had some interest in. Like if you're scrolling, what is it that you'll stop for because you think that's interesting? Something that you've never done before, and commit just 10 minutes a day to doing something that if all else fails that day, if it is a crappy, rotten day for you and nothing has gone right, you have completed 10 minutes of learning something towards the goal of having 60 hours under your belt of new knowledge for something that is going to get you unstuck for it's sort of magical what 10 minutes can do in a 24-hour day. So pick something, and it's a non-negotiable. It's like brushing your teeth. You just probably wouldn't go through a whole day and not brush your teeth unless you do, and then maybe that's another conversation. But it just becomes a non-negotiable in your life
Yeah,
wherever you are. You
yeah.
just do it. And then the second thing, the last thing I would leave people with to go through a new year in a fresh way. And this is not to plug my book, but I'm almost finished with this book and it will be coming out this spring. But the title is Live Like Everyone Loves You. And when you walk into a room and live like you are already liked or loved, you stop thinking about you and all the reasons why people might not want to be next to you or talk to you or engage with you. When you live like you're walking into a room filled with family, people respond to you differently and different doors open for you. It's not a me focused thing. It becomes then I have time to focus on you because I'm not thinking about what you're thinking about me. I lose this
Mm,
all me centered, and I'm going to walk into the room as if you already like me, and I don't even have to just try and try to do this approval
mhm,
game. If I walk into a room filled with people that like me, I am different. I act differently. I don't close off. And it will transform your year when you walk into
mm,
new rooms like you are already liked. People are drawn to you then because you're not
mhm.
trying and you're not thinking about you. You're thinking about how can I affect and inspire them. That's what I would
Wow,
leave.
that's so good. Kind of I keep picturing Audrey Hepburn.
Yeah.
Just sort of like, "Hi, everybody loves me," right?
Yeah. Everybody. Yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah, and that's great. That is a wonderful challenge. For everybody who's listening, if you're on the replay, if you're just getting here, we've had with us today Jill Donovan. She is an entrepreneur. She is the founder and owner of Rustic Cuff, rusticcuff.com. And it's a beautiful a beautiful beautiful company, beautiful products. She makes the most beautiful bracelets, and but she's obviously much more than that, and her inspiration is wonderful. And I've loved having this conversation. We hope to have you back. You're welcome anytime. Come back when your
Thank
book
you.
is ready,
Thank
and
you.
we'll get the book promoted. And everybody, thank you for being here. Thank you for everyone who's in the chat. As I said, when you come back in the replay, please tell us what impact this conversation had on you, and tell us what thing it is that you're going to commit 10 minutes a day to doing in 2025, and then let's check back and see what it is that you decided. For me, it's music. I love
Mm,
music, and it's something that I put aside and had all kinds of excuses. So I'm gonna be moving my bracelet from one arm to
good.
it every day,
Yeah.
to get my music done. And everybody remember, get on the marygracemedia.com mailing list so that you can get notice when we go live with shows like this. You can also go to my Substack, marygracemedia.substack.com. Everybody have a wonderful day. We will be back here soon on the Mary Grace Show. Thank you again.